Richardson.
Thank you, Chair. As I foreshadowed in my second reading speech, the opposition will be moving some amendments to deal with one aspect of this bill. Before I get to that, I just want to update the chamber and anyone watching what is happening here and where we're up to here. Coalition members of the PJCS handed down a dissenting report, the first one in 17 years, on the 12th of May. We said in that dissenting report that we supported this bill, that we recognised the importance of the measures in this bill, including those that were recommended by Dennis Richardson, which our government commissioned and whose recommendations we accepted, and the other recommendation relating to the Foreign Minister's directions to ACIS, which is also in this bill, although it wasn't recommended in the Richardson report. And we said we would support all of those on the condition that the government did not proceed with one other change in this bill, which has not been recommended by any independent inquiry, by any independent expert, which the government has not been able to provide any evidence where this recommendation has come from, and that is the expansion of the PJCS, which we believe is being done by the government under the pretext or for the purpose of putting a member of the crossbench or a minor party on the committee. That is the only area of contention between the government and the opposition, and my amendments will seek to deal with that so that we can support this bill. Just in case the government didn't pick up the signal that we sent in our dissenting report, Senator Cash and I wrote to the Attorney-General and the Minister for Home Affairs on Tuesday last week, and we said we would not be able to support this bill if the changes to the PJCS remained in it, and we said it would potentially also impact our ability to support a subsequent bill, the Intelligence Services Act Amendment Bill, which has just been introduced in the House and referred to the PJCS for inquiry. Now, that bill contemplates broader and deeper oversight of the intelligence community by the PJCS and the IGIS, and the Coalition is up for a conversation about that. We are open to negotiating on that. However, not at the expense of operational security. And it is our view that the expansion of the PJCS to include crossbenchers puts that operational security at risk. And we are not prepared to support this bill or any other bill that puts that at risk. Now, if the government still wasn't clear, following Senator Cash and my letter, in which we offered to negotiate on these questions, in the Senate, when this was considered on Thursday last week, I again made our position clear. And in a meeting with the Attorney-General's office on Friday, Senator Cash and our staff made clear to his staff what our position was. I think it has now dawned on the government only this morning that this bill now cannot pass this chamber unless the government is willing to compromise with the Coalition on PJCS membership, or unless the government is willing to compromise with the Greens on their amendments. Now, let's be really clear about this. The two amendments that the Greens proposed to move would move two of the recommendations made by Dennis Richardson, which we accepted when we were in government, which you have accepted now you're in government, which have bipartisan support, which are straightforward and uncontroversial and appropriate and necessary. And so the government has a pathway here before us. Either do a deal with the Greens on national security and remove bipartisan recommendations made by Dennis Richardson from this bill and therefore put our national security at risk, or do a deal with the Coalition and maintain the bipartisan culture and ethos of the PJCS and get this bill done today, get this legislation passed today. There are important provisions of this bill which should be enforced, and the sooner the better. But we cannot support them while the government makes this unilateral change to the PJCS membership. So this is my final appeal to the government after many appeals. Please pause on this. Please do not proceed with these PJCS changes, which were not recommended by any review, not recommended by any report, not recommended by any independent expert, which the government has only been able to say has been a decision of government and which it has provided no evidence as to why it is necessary. I really appeal to you, support the opposition's amendments. I will move two of them, if necessary, in sequence. The first one would simply omit the changes to the PJCS membership from this bill and leave all other provisions of this bill intact. That doesn't mean that there aren't going to be other opportunities to have discussion about the PJCS membership. That could take place as part of the committee's upcoming inquiry into the Intelligence Services Act reform bill that the government has introduced, or as part of that legislation if the government believes that's necessary. But let's sit down and have a negotiation on a bipartisan basis and maintain the very strong working relationship we've had on the committee. Let's do it that way. Alternatively, if the government is absolutely insistent that we must expand the size of the PJCS membership, and if they are insistent that they need the flexibility to appoint different members of each chamber from the House and from the Senate, then we have a fallback position, we have an alternate position, which is to permit the increase in the size of the PJCS, but to put in the legislation, put in the IS Act for the first time, that, as the convention has always been, save one exception, that those members come from the parties of government, that members of the government and members of the opposition make up the committee. That will allow the government to expand the membership of the PJCS. That will allow the government to choose them from whichever chamber they believe is necessary within limitations. There should be senators and members as a minimum on the committee. And it will only prevent the government from putting a crossbencher or a minor party member on the committee. That's the only change it will do. We really think these are two reasonable propositions which solve the problem that the government has got itself into today. We are offering to work on this on a bipartisan basis to solve this problem, and I really urge the government to consider it.